Too many students are unable to access quality information and use it in the ways they will need to in the workforce. They know how to type things into Google, but they don't know how to use other trusted sources to uncover what they need. Often their schools subscribe to databases. If children are not accessing a range of literature, they are not being challenged. In schools that don't have teacher librarians, what tends to happen is classroom teachers may take the kids in to borrow books. They don't have the thorough knowledge of the library collection that a teacher librarian does. This is in spite of the fact that nearly 90% of young people are finishing school, and many are completing tertiary education. While having a degree does improve employment opportunities in the long run, some young people fare better than others. For example, about half of all science graduates are only employed part-time 4 months after graduating. Minister for Home Affairs Peter Dutton says the government's move to increase the points threshold for skilled migration will enhance the quality of migrants coming to Australia. The federal government has raised the minimum score on skilled migration points test required to apply for skilled visas to Australia, subclass 189, subclass 190 and subclass 489. Capabilities are addressed in varied ways across the country and often not prioritized, as they do not count in high-stakes assessment. Some students develop capabilities outside of school, in scouts, drama clubs and the like, but not all students have these opportunities. A focus on capabilities needs to continue in tertiary education, because it is vital that discipline-specific capabilities are developed. More nuanced career planning is essential to enable young people to navigate a complex employment landscape. We also need to do better at highlighting where various tertiary pathways can lead. A key to all of this is reconceiving what a strong education system should deliver. Success should be every young person being on a positive pathway at age 24. Western Australia's oldest university has received the lowest overall satisfaction score from undergraduates of any of the state's major higher education institutions, falling just below the national average. Measuring the overall quality of educational experience, the University of Western Australia was rated at 78.3% in an annual federally funded student experience survey. Primary Industries Minister Sarah Courtenay revealed in State Parliament on Wednesday that as of April 30, the government had spent $5.5 million tackling fruit fly incursions in the state's north through biosecurity response activities and assistance to growers and the wider industry. More than $8 million is budgeted for this financial year, and the federal government recently tipped in $20 million for the fight. Allegations about inappropriate care have been made against a for-profit provider being used by the Tasmanian government to care for children with disabilities on child protection orders. The ABC can also reveal the provider Total Support Services, TSS, was managed by a former senior employee of Safe Pathways. Beijing has been angered by the government's legislation to crack down on foreign interference, legislation which is largely aimed at China's increasingly sophisticated attempts to flex its muscles within Australia's borders. There are also long-standing tensions over Australia's stance on Beijing's militarization of the South China Sea, as well as Canberra's attempts to hedge against China's meteoric rise in our region. Social media stars might be encouraging children to eat more unhealthy snacks, a new study suggests. It found children who saw popular vloggers consuming sugary and fatty snacks went on to eat 26% more calories than those who did not. The study, presented at the European Congress on Obesity, examined the responses of children to images from social media. The demand came as part of a manifesto drawn up by more than 100 organizations across the industry and sent to the PM. It urges the government to publish a white paper setting out its immigration plans as a matter of priority. A government spokesperson said those in the sector would be able to recruit EU. If you were rich and powerful, from the late 1500s on into the late 1700s, you would show off your wealth by adorning your fashionable clothing with yards of handmade lace. This was true in a town whose history is explored in our exhibition. Among the artifacts displayed in the section is a reproduction bobbin lace pillow showing lace being made. By the early 1900s, however, temperance advocates had begun to achieve local and statewide bans on alcohol, blaming the beer-soaked saloon for society's ills. Looking to a future without beer, brewers concocted malt syrups and beer extracts, encouraging consumers to brew at home. When national prohibition went into effect in 1920, some breweries continued to brew surreptitiously as wildcat operations, supplying local customers and funneling ingredients to homebrewers. Today, most Americans expect access a constant flow of information on demand. The idea that news of a major event might take days or weeks to travel across the country seems a relic of the distant past. Once aware of an event, people expect to obtain fresh information immediately and perhaps even to witness parts of the event in real time. Since the wool fabric in many of the colonial embroideries they used as models had been damaged by moths, the society decided to begin its work with linen fabric and indigo blue dyed linen thread. As other neighbors joined, the society enrolled a roster of 25 to 30 women. The society sold its work at an annual summer exhibition and at arts and crafts exhibitions in New York. In downtown Los Angeles, the 5-block-wide neighborhood known as Little Tokyo is home to America's largest Japanese population. In 1905, this small area was home to about half of the city's 10,000 Japanese, and remained a destination for newly arrived Japanese residents until the Oriental Exclusion Act of 1924. The 30,000 Japanese residents of Little Tokyo were removed to imprisonment camps during World War II. Antarctica is a very harsh and extreme environment, though is very rich in wildlife, due to the very high productivity of the Antarctic Ocean during the summer months. Long days provide abundant light and copious nutrients brought to the surface layers by ocean upwellings along the Antarctic convergence fertilize the growth of phytoplankton. Human pancreatic islets already can be transplanted into diabetic patients for treatment. This makes it difficult to get the maximum health benefit for patients getting these procedures, the authors write. And although stem cell-based tissue engineering has tremendous therapeutic potential, its future clinical use still faces the critical challenge of ensuring a blood supply to nourish the transplanted tissues, according to researchers. Modern observations show the difference in heat propels atmospheric changes that drive the intensity of the monsoon. Beck said the monsoon can affect wind and ocean currents as far away as the North Atlantic and Arctic Oceans. The Asian monsoon season is the biggest annual rainfall system on Earth and brings rainfall to about half the world's population. Infant and childhood food allergy has now been linked to a mix of environmental and genetic factors. Those factors include genetics that alter skin absorbency, use of infant cleansing wipes that leave soap on the skin exposure to allergens in dust, and skin exposure to food from those providing infant care. Online dating, chatty smartphones, and social media played no role in the evolution of our ancestors, yet humans managed to deal with and even exploit these hallmarks of modern living. In a new article, researchers review the latest social neuroscience literature and argue that our ability to respond to the challenges of a fast-changing culture. A study offers an explanation for a mysterious and sometimes deadly weather pattern in which the jet stream, the global air currents that circle the Earth, stalls out over a region. Much like highways, the jet stream has a capacity, researchers said, and when it's exceeded, blockages form that are remarkably similar to traffic jams. A new study carried out by the University of Exeter and Tokyo University of the Arts has found that songs from around the world tend to share features, including a strong rhythm, that enable coordination in social situations and encourage group bonding. Despite decades of skepticism about the presence of cross-culturally universal aspects of music, chemical analysis of the remains of rats from archaeological sites, spanning the last 2,000 years on 3 Polynesian island systems, has shown the impact that humans have had on local environments. The analysis by an international team of scientists allowed the researchers to reconstruct the rats' diets, and through them the changes made by humans to local ecosystems. Earth has arguably entered a new geological epoch called the Anthropocene, an era in which humans are bringing about significant, lasting change to the planet. While most geologists and ecologists place the origins of this era in the last 50 to 300 years, many archaeologists have argued that far-reaching human impacts on geology, biodiversity, and climate extend back millennia into the past. A new study by the University of Liverpool, in collaboration with the universities of Lancaster and Oslo, sheds light on a long-standing question that has puzzled Earth scientists. Using previously unavailable data, researchers confirm a correlation between the movement of plate tectonics on the Earth's surface, the flow of mantle above the Earth's core, and the rate of reversal of the Earth's magnetic field. Misinformation is an increasingly difficult challenge for Australian teachers and students. Students of the 1980s and 1990s will remember their teacher pointing out the occasional inaccuracy in a textbook, for example. But here the problem was always contained. Textbooks had typically been through an editorial process and vetting by the school. Virtual reality is the tipping point for innovation in education. The success of technology, such as games and VR, in the classroom is usually due to the efforts of a pioneering cohort, who work against a strong tide that's judiciously pragmatic. And it's usually this tide that cannot see the immediate educational potential of such content. According to the Department of Home Affairs, the testing of English language speaking skills is designed to ensure applicants have the ability to communicate effectively in face-to-face situations within Australia. As a result of this change in the test, the department has excluded TOEFL PBT from the acceptable English tests for student visas. Space, the final frontier, or so they say. They clearly haven't turned their gaze to our own planet. Yes, space is frightening in an overwhelmingly existential way. But nothing about space, not the potential for alien assaults, not the inevitability of solar implosion, not the eons of never-ending nothingness, is as downright petrifying as the ocean. For starters, we've barely explored any of it. Most people desperately want to figure out the secret to work-life balance, but the truth is, there's no one-size-fits-all solution. The addition of technology to our rush days adds another complicated layer as well. We're available around the clock to employers, co-workers and clients, and we constantly feel pressure to be high-performing at the office and in our homes. Unmanned aircraft systems, UAS, are an increasingly popular tool for wildlife ecologists, because they can collect high-quality data in a short amount of time. But before they are put to full use in the Arctic, where traditional ground-based field work can be especially challenging. They are simply a different way of collecting data. Certain commonplace words and phrases, while seemingly harmless, when used in the office can make one appear unprofessional or uneducated. Verbally expressing casualness and uncertainty, or playing the blame game around coworkers and superiors, can do irreparable harm to your reputation and advancement potential. On the other hand, confidence, respectful formality and taking responsibility can make all the difference. Information overload and logical fallacies find their ways into more than day-to-day conversations. It is ingrained in advertising, social media and the big screen. They appear in the subtlest of ways to the most discernible, in the form of political speeches to advertising campaigns. Winning or losing an argument is one thing, but understanding the quality and validity of a claim is another. Tons of people who think they know a thing or two about being successful love to tell you to get up early and attack the day. Very few of them focus on how easy and fun it is waking up in the wee hours of the morning if you're not used to it. Government guidelines sometimes contradict nutrition experts' advice as they play catch-up with the latest scientific findings. Dietary advice from the U.S. Departments of Agriculture and Health and Human Services includes eggs as part of a healthy diet. And the Food and Drug Administration says that eggs are too high in total fat, saturated fat and cholesterol to be labeled healthy by food marketers. Two of the most basic are related to behavioral adaptations and evolutionary mismatch. Each of which is, ultimately, derived from the law of natural selection, which simply states that those qualities of organisms that are relatively likely to be selected. Importantly, again, these are only a subset of the many laws have documented as underlying human behavioral phenomena. People often think passive-aggressive communication is somehow better or nicer. The French have a wonderful expression for passive aggression. It means what is understood underneath. In other words, you're saying one thing that sounds innocent, but really meaning another that can actually be quite vicious. If you are looking for true and meaningful connection and understanding with another person, you need a better strategy. An international team of astronomers have made the most precise test of gravity outside our own solar system. Astronomers have made the most precise test of gravity outside our own solar system. By combining data taken with NASA's Hubble Space Telescope and the European Southern Observatory's Very Large Telescope, the researchers show that gravity in this galaxy. It has been known since 1929 that the universe is expanding, but in 1998 two teams of astronomers showed that the universe is expanding faster now than it was in the past. This surprising discovery, which won the Nobel Prize in 2011, cannot be explained unless the universe is mostly made of an exotic component called dark energy. Using this tiny amount of power, the chip is able to process in real-time camera images at up to 171 frames per second, as well as inertial measurements, both of which it uses to determine where it is in space. The researchers say the chip can be integrated into nano-drones to help the vehicles navigate, particularly in remote or inaccessible places where global positioning satellite data is unavailable. Scientists envision that such tiny vehicles can fly around and snap pictures of your surroundings, like mosquito-sized photographers or surveyors, before landing back in your palm. But a palm-sized drone can only carry so much battery power, most of which is used to make its motors fly, leaving very little energy for other essential operations. Or a robot's ability to determine where it is in space. Daily fasting is an effective tool to reduce weight and lower blood pressure, according to a new study published by University of Illinois at Chicago researchers in the journal Nutrition and Healthy Aging. The study is the first to examine the effect of time-restricted eating, a form of fasting that limits food consumption to select hours each day, on weight loss in obese individuals. The current study revolves around the nerve cells that coordinate thought and memory. Each cell in a nerve pathway sends an electric pulse down its branches until it reaches a synapse. Signals that form memories start at synapses where sights and sounds trigger responses, and end when genes are turned on in the nuclei of nerve cells to make permanent, physical changes. Since the 1970s, hundreds of studies have suggested that each hemisphere of the brain is home to a specific type of emotion. Emotions linked to approaching and engaging with the world, like happiness, pride and anger, lives in the left side of the brain, while emotions associated with avoidance are housed in the right. But those studies were done almost exclusively on right-handed people. The work has implications for a current treatment for recalcitrant anxiety and depression called neural therapy. Similar to the technique used in the study and approved by the Food and Drug Administration, it involves a mild electrical stimulation or a magnetic stimulation to the left side of the brain to encourage approach-related emotions. Stimulation on the left would decrease life-affirming approach emotions. Considered the greatest English-speaking writer in history and known as England's national poet, William Shakespeare, 1564–1616, has had more theatrical works performed than any other playwright. To this day, countless theatre festivals around the world honor his work, students memorize his eloquent poems and scholars reinterpret the million words of text he composed. It's commonly thought that the devil first showed up in the Bible in the book of Genesis as the serpent who convinced Eve, who then convinced Adam, to eat forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge in the Garden of Eden. As the story goes, after Eve fell for the devil's conniving ways, she and Adam were banished from the Garden of Eden and doomed to mortality. More and more people are choosing a dairy-free diet and, in response, the range of dairy-free milks is growing. But there's more to dairy-free milk than just the taste. Many dairy-free milks are low in saturated fat, cholesterol-free, packed with vitamins and calcium. Some are even lower in kilojoules than similar dairy.